She thought stealing a piece of bread would keep her alive one more day, but instead, it brought her face to face with the one man who could change her fate forever. Clara Weston arrived at a stranger's ranch in a torn wedding dress, hunted by a man who believed he owned her. And when that man came to take her back, the desert itself seemed to hold its breath. But this isn't just a story about running. It's a story about standing your ground, facing the darkness, and discovering that love can rise from the ashes of fear. This story reminds us that healing begins the moment we stop running from fear and choose to stand for our worth, our freedom, and the people who truly love us. If this story speaks to your heart, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Thank you for being part of our community.
The year was 1874 in the heart of a Texas summer. The bread felt hot in Clara's hands, but she held on. The man repeated himself, saying he had asked her a question. He took a step forward. He had dust on his boots and the sun in his eyes. The rifle was level, but it was not pointed at her heart. Wedding or grave? Does it make a difference? It might, he said. Clara's legs started to tremble. She could not remember the last time she had slept. Was it 2 nights ago, maybe 3? The nights had all blended together in a blur of darkness and fear. I will put it back, she said, talking about the bread. I will put it back, and then I will leave. He told her she would not get a half-mile. Not in this heat, and not in her condition. That is my problem, she said. It is on my land, he replied. That makes it my problem, too. He moved sideways, putting himself between her and the door. He was not trying to scare her. He was just a solid wall she could not get past. Sit down, he said. No, it was not a request. Clara's jaw set hard. Are you going to shoot me if I refuse? No, ma'am. But you are about to collapse, and I would rather you fell into a chair than onto my clean floor. Before she could answer, her knees gave out. She steadied herself by grabbing the edge of the table. The bread slipped from her grasp and rolled onto the wooden surface. The man did not bother with it. He just pulled a chair out for her and waited. Clara sat down. He walked over to a basin, worked the pump to fill a tin cup with water, and placed it on the table before her. Then he just leaned against the counter with his arms folded and watched her. Drink, he said. She took a long drink. The water felt like a punch to her empty stomach. Slower. She made herself pause, take a breath, and then sip. Your name, he said. Clara. Do you have a last name, Clara? Weston. His eyes glanced down at her left hand. There was no ring, but he saw the pale line on her skin where one had been for a long time. Are you a widow? Yes. How long? 2 years. He gave a single, sharp nod, taking it all in. That dress is not 2 years old. Clara put the cup down. She was glad to see her hands were steady now. That was an improvement. No, she said. It is 6 days old. So you were getting married again? No, I was being forced into a marriage. There is a big difference. The man's face showed no emotion, but his posture changed slightly. He relaxed, just a bit, like a door that was bolted had just been unlocked. Who was it? My brother-in-law, Marcus Weston. After my husband passed, he got everything. The house, the doctor's practice. He figured I was just part of the property. And you did not agree? I told him no. He locked me inside my room. He said I would either walk down the aisle or he would carry me there. Clara looked him straight in the eye, so I climbed out the window instead. There was a long silence. The only sounds were the ticking of a clock on the wall and a horse whinnying outside. In the distance, a crow called out. "Is he coming after you?" "Yes." "How far behind is he?" "A day, maybe not even that. He has got a lot of money. He has got connections. The sheriff over in Austin is his own cousin." Clara felt stronger now and stood up. "I should not have stopped here. I need to go." "Go where?" "To Mexico, maybe. I really do not know. Just anywhere that he cannot find me." "You have money to get to Mexico?" "No." "Any food?" "No." "Do you have a plan?" "I already told you." "No." The man pushed himself away from the counter. He went to the window and stared out at the wide, flat land, cooking under the July sun. "My name is Caleb Thornton," he said, his back still to her. "This here is my ranch. 60 acres. I raise mostly horses and a few cattle." Clara did not say anything. "I had a housekeeper here until the spring. She went and married a surveyor and moved to San Antonio. It has just been me since then." He turned to face her. "I am a terrible cook. This kitchen is a complete mess, and I have got far more work than one person can handle. Why are you telling me all this?" "Because I am offering you a job." Clara just stared at him. "What?" "Room and board. You would cook, clean, and help with whatever else comes up. In return, you get a place to sleep, 3 meals every day, and a door you can lock at night. You do not even know me. I know that you told me the truth even when I caught you stealing my food. That is more than I can say for most people. I could be a killer. You could be." He almost cracked a smile. But killers do not usually pass out from starvation. Clara's thoughts were racing. This felt too simple, too good to be true. Men never offered help for free. There was always something they wanted in return. "What is it you want?" she asked. "I already told you. A cook, is that all?" "That is all. And what happens if Marcus shows up?" Caleb's jaw muscles tightened for just a moment. "If Marcus comes here, he's going to find a woman who works on my ranch. He will not find a runaway bride. He will not find a thief. He will just find a person earning an honest wage for an honest day's work." He crossed his arms over his chest. "What he chooses to do with that information will be up to him, but I can promise you he will not take anyone off my land unless I say so." "You would fight him for me?" "I would ask him to leave. And if he says no?" Caleb's eyes turned flat and cold. "Then I would stop asking." The threat lingered in the air between them. Clara looked closely at his face. She saw the lines around his eyes. She saw a scar on his jaw that she had missed before. She noticed how his hands, which were large and scarred and capable, were resting calmly at his sides. "Why?" she asked him. "Why are you helping me?" He took a moment before he answered. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. 5 years ago, my wife was in town when a robbery happened. I was out working on the range. She was gone by the time I got back. They shot her right through the chest because she refused to give them her wedding ring." Clara gasped. "I was not there to save her," Caleb continued. "I rode right past 3 men on the road that day, and I did not even stop them. I did not ask a single question. I just kept on riding because I had work to do." His eyes met hers. "I think about that every single day. I wonder what would have happened if I had just stopped, if I had just paid a little attention. That was not your fault. Maybe not. But it is something I have to live with." He stood up straighter. "So now when I see a woman in a torn dress with bloody feet running from a man who thinks he can own her, I stop. I ask questions. And I offer whatever help I can." He took a breath. "That is all this is. It is nothing more than that." Clara just stood there holding the empty cup, with the bread still lying on the floor. She knew she had 2 choices. She could keep running until Marcus finally caught her, or until she died out in the desert. Or she could stay right here with this stranger, a man with his own ghosts, and hope that for once trusting someone was not a mistake. "All right," she said. Caleb nodded his head. "All right, but I need to be very clear about something." "Go ahead." "I will work to earn my keep. I am not a charity case you can feel sorry for. I am not some delicate flower that needs protecting. And I am definitely not looking for another husband. I am done with that life. I will not go back to it. Fair enough. And if you ever, and I mean ever, try to order me around outside of my work, I will be gone. There will be no discussion, no second chances. I will just be gone. Caleb's lips twitched. It was that almost smile again. Ma'am, I have been on my own for 5 years. I can barely tell myself what to do. He bent down, picked up the bread from the table, and placed it back down. Eat something, then I will show you the kitchen. It is even worse than you imagine. The kitchen was a complete disaster. Clara stood at the entrance, her hands on her hips, just taking in the mess. There was grease all over the stove, a mountain of dishes in the sink, and something that looked like an old potato rotting away in a corner. You are not kidding, she said. I do not kid about things like that. When was the last time you cleaned this place? Define what you mean by clean. Clara gave him a sharp look. The spring, he finally admitted. It is July now. I have been busy. She started rolling up her sleeves. Where is the soap? In the supply closet over there. What about hot water? There is a pump out back. I will get some water heating on the stove. They worked without speaking for the next hour. Clara did all the scrubbing. Caleb hauled in the water. By midday, the stove was shining, and the dishes were all clean and put away in the cupboard. Clara dried her hands on a cloth and looked at what she had done. Much better. It looks like a whole new room. The room was always here. It was just buried under a layer of grime. Anyone could have found it if they had just taken the time to look. Caleb put down the water bucket he was holding. Are you always this blunt? Do you want me to lie to you? No. He took his hat off a hook by the door. I am just not used to it. Well, get used to it. He let out a short, rough laugh. It sounded like he was surprised, like he had forgotten the sound. I will be out in the barn, he said. I have got some horses that need attention. If you need anything, just yell. He left before she could say another word. Clara stood by herself in the clean kitchen, with the afternoon sun pouring through the window. She felt something that she had not felt for weeks. She felt safe. She did not trust the feeling, but it was there. That evening she made dinner. It was nothing special. Just beans, salt pork, and some cornbread she made from supplies she found in the pantry. But she cooked it the right way, the way her mother had shown her. When Caleb came inside from the barn, covered in dust and sweat, he stopped right in the doorway and took a deep breath. Now that smells like real food. It smells like a home. He sat down at the table without her having to ask. Clara set a plate down for him. He ate his food slowly, carefully, as if he wanted to remember every single bite. Is it good? She asked. It is better than good. She sat down on the other side of the table with her own dinner. The quiet between them felt different now. It was not a suspicious silence or a careful one. It was just comfortable. Tell me about this ranch, she said. What is it you want to know? Everything. If I'm going to be working here, I need to know. To see how this place works. Caleb put his fork down. It is 60 acres. 40 of that is good pasture land. I raise horses for the most part, sell them to the army, to ranchers out west. Pretty much anyone who needs a sturdy horse. I run some cattle on the side, a small herd, maybe 30 head. I take them to market come fall. And you handle all this by yourself? I hire on some hands for the cattle drive. The rest of the year, it is just me. That is an awful lot of work for one man. I get by. Clara glanced around the kitchen, taking in the clean counters, the tidy shelves, and the little spots of wear she had not yet fixed. You do more than get by, she said, but you are running yourself ragged. Caleb did not argue the point. He just lifted his fork and went back to his meal. What did your wife do? Clara asked. His fork stopped in midair for just a heartbeat. She handled the ledgers, ran the house, and made sure I remembered to eat when I got lost in my work. He set the fork down for good. She was the one with a knack for people. I do not have that. I am not much of a talker. I noticed. She could enter a room and have new friends inside of 5 minutes. When I walk in, people figure I'm looking to pick a fight. Are you? Not usually. A small smile almost touched Clara's lips. I am not her, she stated plainly. I cannot be what she was. I did not ask you to be. I know, but I felt it needed saying. Caleb gave a slight nod. He got up, carried his plate to the wash basin, and paused with his hand on the pump. She would have liked you, he said. Sarah, my wife, she would have appreciated that stubborn streak of yours. Clara was at a loss for words, so she stayed quiet. Caleb pumped the water, washed his plate, and placed it on the rack to dry. Well, I am heading to bed, he announced. Your room is just down the hall, the second door. There are clean sheets on the bed. Thank you. He stopped in the doorway. Clara. Yes. Lock your door tonight. It is not because I would ever... He paused, then tried again. Just until you feel you can trust me. Go ahead and lock it. I will not take it personal. And then he was gone. Clara remained in the quiet kitchen, the fire burning down to embers as the deep night pushed against the window panes. She locked her door that night, and for the first time in 6 long days, she slept without dreaming of being chased. 3 days came and went. Clara started to find her footing. She was up before the sun, had coffee brewing, and breakfast on the table by the time Caleb came inside from the barn. After that, she spent her time cleaning, mending, and putting things in order. She discovered a bolt of cloth in a storage closet and stitched herself a new dress. It was simple and practical, a world away from the ruined white silk dress she had burned in the pit behind the house. And she watched the road. Each time a rider appeared on the horizon, a knot would tighten in her gut. Every time the wind sounded like hoofbeats, her hand would find the handle of the kitchen knife. But the riders were always just neighbors, cowboys passing through, men who would tip their hats and ride on by. Caleb noticed. You are always watching that road, he said one evening, walking in covered in trail dust. I am just looking. You have been staring down that road for 3 days now. Clara turned away from the window. Does it bother you? No, just making an observation. He hung his hat on its peg. If you want a heads up when someone is coming, I can show you the bell. He explained, I have a line rigged from the main gate to a bell in the barn. When someone opens the gate, the bell rings. Gives me about a 5-minute warning. Clara just stared at him. You set that up yourself? Had a spot of trouble a few years back, cattle thieves. They do not come around here anymore. What happened to them? Caleb's expression turned hard as rock. It was that cold look she had seen before. They stopped coming around. Clara knew better than to ask for more details. On the 4th day, Caleb had to ride into town for supplies. Clara stayed at the ranch, knowing it was too risky to be seen. Too many questions would be asked. She washed the windows and reorganized the pantry, doing everything she could to not think about Marcus. She failed. By afternoon, her nerves were stretched tighter than a fiddle string. Every shadow seemed to take the shape of a man. Every whistle of the wind sounded like footsteps. She was at the window again, gazing at the empty road, with the knife tucked securely in her apron. Then the bell rang. Clara's heart jumped into her throat. She grabbed the rifle from its place above the fireplace, just where Caleb had shown her, and moved to the window. A lone rider was approaching at a slow pace. It was not Caleb. The horse was wrong. Clara forced her breathing to steady, shouldered the rifle, and waited. The rider drew closer and closer. Then she could make out the face. It was Caleb, but on his bay mare, not the usual gray gelding. Clara lowered the rifle, her hands trembling. When Caleb got to the porch, his eyes went from her to the rifle to the way her knuckles were white on the wood. Good, he said. Horse to the rail. That is good. I almost shot you. But you did not. You waited and you checked. That is what counts. Clara set the rifle aside. Her hands refused to stop shaking. Caleb came up the porch steps and stood before her. He was close enough to touch. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, look at me." She met his gaze. "You are safe," he told her. "Right now. Right here. You are safe. You cannot promise me that." "No, I cannot. But I can promise you I will fight like the devil himself to make it so." He reached out a hand, slow and deliberate, giving her plenty of time to back away. His hand came to rest on her shoulder, its warmth steady and solid. "Okay," Clara managed to nod. She did not trust her voice to speak. "Okay," he repeated. "Now let's go inside. I've got some news." They sat together at the kitchen table. Caleb poured them both a cup of coffee. Clara cradled the warm mug in her hands, letting the heat sink deep into her bones. "There was a fella in town," Caleb began, "asking a lot of questions." Clara's cup clattered on its saucer. "A tall man, dark hair, wearing a coat that cost more than my saddle. He said he was looking for his sister-in-law. Claimed she went missing after a family tragedy and he was just worried sick about her." "That is not—" "I know." Caleb's voice was flat and hard. "I know what he is." "Did he say which way he was headed?" "South, toward the border. That is what they told him." "They?" "The shopkeeper, the blacksmith, a few others." Caleb looked her right in the eye. "I had a word with them before I left 3 days ago. I asked them to keep quiet about any woman staying on my land. Asked them to point anyone asking questions in the wrong direction." Clara stared at him, stunned. "Why did you not tell me?" "To spook you unless I had to. I deserve to know." "You are right." He did not try to argue. "I should have told you." Clara put her cup down. "How much time do we have?" "That depends. If he really follows that trail south, we might have a week. If he gets wise that he has been sent on a wild goose chase and turns back—" Caleb shook his head. 2, maybe 3 days. I should leave." "No." "Caleb, I said no." He leaned forward, his voice firm. "You take off now. You are out there alone with no food, no horse, and no plan. He will run you down in a day, maybe even less. And if I stay, he will find me here. He will find you. You do not understand what he is capable of." "I have a pretty good idea." "You do not," Clara's voice broke. "He killed a man in Austin, some poor soul who could not pay a debt. He made it look like a robbery. Everybody knew the truth, but nobody did a thing because Marcus owns half that town." Caleb was silent for a long, heavy moment. "Well then," he finally said, "I reckon we had best get ready." "Ready for what?" "For whatever he decides to bring our way." Caleb stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the sky as it began to darken. "I have a rifle, a shotgun, about 20 rounds of ammunition, a barn that can be barred from the inside, and a root cellar out back that nobody even knows exists. That is not enough. It is a start." He turned to face her again. "I have seen worse odds. Through the war and afterward, 5 years of living out here alone and holding on to what is mine." His gaze was unwavering. "I am no hero, Clara. I am just a man who is too damn stubborn to quit. But I have never lost a fight that I chose to have." "Why?" she whispered. "What makes you do something like this?" Caleb came back over to the table. He stood right over her, close enough she could see the salt starting to show in his hair, the old hurt carved deep around his eyes. "Because 5 years ago I didn't pull up. I didn't ask a single question. I just kept on riding, and my wife died by herself right there in the street." His voice got low. "I'm not going to make that mistake a second time. Not for anything." A knot formed in Clara's throat. "I am not your do-over," she told him. I am not here to replace what you couldn't save. I know. And I am not some helpless woman who needs a man to rescue her. I know that too. So what am I to you? Caleb held her stare. You are someone a man ought to fight for. Those words just hung there in the little room. They felt heavy, and they felt true. Clara got to her feet. They were standing close now. A little too close. She could feel the warmth coming off of him and smell the leather and trail dust on him. I do not know if you are a man I can trust, she said. Then do not. Not yet. Just stay put. Give it a little time. And what if Marcus shows up before that time runs out? Caleb's jaw went tight. Then we will face him side by side. Clara studied him. This man she did not know from Adam, this stranger who gave her a roof and some safety. He gave her something that felt an awful lot like hope. She had put her trust in a man before. She had been wrong. But the look in his eyes, something broken and decent and real, made her want to risk it again. Together, she said. He gave one sharp nod. Together. Outside, the sun was sinking down below the flat horizon. The whole sky was on fire with red and gold. Somewhere down on that road south, Marcus Weston was riding toward the border, following a trail that led to nowhere, but a man can find his way back from a wrong trail. Lies have a way of coming undone, and Clara knew with a cold certainty deep in her belly that their time was running out. The next morning showed up way too soon. Clara woke to the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of boots on the wood floor. She sat bolt upright, her heart hammering as her hands shot under the pillow for her knife before she remembered where she was. Safe for the time being. She got dressed in a hurry and found Caleb in the kitchen. He already had 2 cups poured. You are up before the sun, she said. Did not get much shut-eye. He slid a cup across the table to her. We need to have a talk. Clara sat. About Marcus. About what is going to happen when he gets here. Not if, but when. Caleb's eyes were like stone. A man like that is not the quittin' type. He will figure out he is chasing the wind. He will turn back around. And when he does, he will start asking another kind of questions. Clara clutched the warm cup in her hands. What kind of questions? The kind a man asks when he is waving cash around. Not everyone in this town is a friend of mine. Some folks have a price. How much time? 3 days, maybe 4. It just depends on how quick he puts it all together. Clara's stomach twisted into a knot. 3 days. 4. It was not nearly enough time to run. Not enough time to find a new hiding place. What are we going to do? Caleb set his cup down. We get ready for him. He spent the whole morning showing her the lay of the land. Not the pretty spots, but the spots that could save her. The root cellar out behind the barn, hidden underneath a pile of old straw and busted planks. The hidden trail through the mesquite that went down to the creek. The neighbor's ranch 2 miles to the east, where a woman named Ruth lived by herself and owed Caleb a good turn. If this all goes south, he said, you make a run for Ruth's place. She will keep you hidden. And you? I will buy you some time. Clara stopped walking right then and there. No, Clara. No, I am not letting you die on my account. I will not be the reason another man... Her voice broke. She turned her back on him. Caleb did not reach for her. He simply stood there and waited. My husband died saving people he did not even know, she said, not looking at him. He stayed put when all the others ran. He knew exactly what it would cost him, and he stayed right there anyway. And I was the one who had to bury him. I had to just stand there and watch them lower him into the dirt, and know that he chose those people instead of me. That is not... Do not... She whirled around to face him. Do not you dare tell me this is any different. Do not you tell me he was some kind of hero. I know what he was, and I know what it cost me. Her eyes were burning. Her eyes. I will not stand by and watch another man die for me. Caleb was quiet for what felt like a very long time. Then he took a step toward her. "I do not plan on dying," he said, "but I also do not plan on letting you face this by yourself. And that is not up for debate, Clara. Everything is up for debate. Not this." His voice was steady, not mean. "You showed up on my land. You are sleeping under my roof. That makes you my concern. I am not your concern. I do not belong to anyone. Then call it something else." He met her stare. "Call it a partnership. Call it plain old stubbornness. Call it whatever you want to call it. But I am not letting you run out into that desert all alone. And I am not letting that man put his hands on you. That is the end of it." Clara just stared at him. Her chest hurt with a feeling she could not put a name to. "Why do you even care?" she whispered. Caleb did not give an answer right away. He looked out past her toward the horizon at something she was not able to see. "Because it has been a long time being alone," he said at last. "And because you are the first person in 5 years who sees more than just a widower on a ranch." The words landed like a punch. She had no idea what to say to that. Caleb turned and started walking back to the house. "Come on. I will teach you how to shoot." Clara did as he said. That rifle had some real heft to it, more than she figured. Caleb came up behind her, fixing her grip, her footing the way she held her shoulder. "Do not hold your breath," he told her. "Squeeze the trigger easy. Do not yank it." She fired. The shot went way wide, kicking up a cloud of dust 10 feet from the tin can. Again. She fired again, a little closer. Again. After about 10 shots, she could hit the fence post 3 times out of 5. Her shoulder was aching. Her ears were ringing, but a change had taken place inside her. She felt like she was not just a target anymore. "Good," Caleb said. "Tomorrow we will try from farther back." "And the day after that?" "The day after that," he said, "we pray we do not have a need for it." That evening, they sat out on the porch while the sun bled out across the sky. Clara had made a stew with the last bit of their beef, and they had eaten without saying much. Now the plates were clean, and the sky was turning a deep purple. "Tell me about her," Clara said softly. Caleb did not have to ask who she was talking about. "Sarah?" "Yes." He stayed quiet so long Clara figured he was not going to say a word. "Time." A faint smile touched his lips. "She was the only one who ever made this ranch feel like a real home." "How long were you all married?" 7 years. I knew her since we were just kids. She grew up on the ranch right next to my daddy's place. We used to race our horses down along the creek bed. Who usually won? She did. Every single time. She was not scared of anything. The smile vanished from his face. That is what got her killed. She was not afraid of a single thing on this earth. When those fellas walked into the general store with their guns out, she did not try to hide. She got right in their faces, told them to go straight to hell. A lump grew in Clara's throat. "They killed her for her wedding band," Caleb said. "Just a little piece of gold not worth $10. And I was way out on the range counting my cattle because I thought my work was more important than riding to town with her. That is not your fault. Maybe so, but it is a burden I have got to carry." He looked over at her. "We all have them. The burdens we cannot ever set down." Clara knew that feeling better than he could ever imagine. "My husband begged me to get out of town," she said. "When the cholera hit, he told me I should get on a coach to St. Louis and wait it out with my sister. I told him I would never leave his side. But you left." He put something in my tea. "I woke up in a boarding house 50 miles from home with a letter in my dress pocket." Her voice became hard as iron. "By the time I made it back, he had been gone for 3 days. They had already put him in the ground. I never even had the chance to say goodbye." Caleb did not say a word. He just sat there, solid and quiet, letting her story fill the space between them. "I hated him for it," Clara said. "Hated him for a long, long time. For making that choice for me. For deciding I was not strong enough to stay beside him." She took a breath. "A part of me still hates him for it. But the other part knows he was right. If I had stayed there, I would be dead too." And then Marcus would have just taken everything with nobody left to stand in his way. So, your husband saved your life. He saved it. And then Marcus came along and tried to take it. Clara's hands balled into fists in her lap. I wonder sometimes if Thomas saw it coming. If maybe he sent me away not just to save me from the sickness, but to save me from his own brother. Does it really matter why? Clara considered that. Maybe not. But it makes it easier thinking there was a good reason for it all. They sat there in silence for a good while after that. The stars popped out in the dark sky, one after another. The night air started to get cool. I do not know what is going to happen, Clara finally said. When Marcus gets here, neither do I. But you are going to fight him anyway, yes, even if we lose. Even if... Caleb turned his head to look at her. In the dim light, she could not read his eyes. Some fights are worth having, even if you know you are going to lose, he said. Clara did not ask him what he meant by that. She was not sure she was ready to hear the answer. The next 2 days were a frantic rush to get ready. Clara shot that rifle until her shoulder was black and blue. Caleb nailed boards over the windows, counted out all the ammunition, and went over the escape plans again and again. They moved around each other without a word, like they had been doing it for years. On the morning of the 3rd day, Caleb rode into town to see what he could hear. Clara waited. She scrubbed the kitchen clean twice. She rearranged everything in the pantry. She checked the rifle, then checked it again. The hours just crawled by like wounded animals. When the bell clanged late in the afternoon, she instantly grabbed the rifle and went to the window. It was Caleb, on the same horse, and he was alone. She lowered the rifle and opened the door. She knew from the look on his face before he even spoke a word. He is here, Caleb said. He rode in this morning, got a room at the hotel, and started asking questions. A chill washed over Clara. What kind of questions? About a woman who fits your description. He is telling everyone his beloved sister-in-law had some kind of nervous spell and just wandered off. Says he only wants to bring her home. Did anyone tell him anything? Not yet. But he is offering money. A whole lot of it. Caleb swung down from his horse and tied the reins. It is just a matter of time now. Clara's hands began to tremble. How long? A day. 2 at the most. He walked up the porch steps and stopped right in front of her. We have a choice to make. What choice? We can run tonight. We can head for the border and hope we get there before he figures out which way we went. And the other option? Caleb's jaw clenched. We stay. We wait for him to come to us. And we end this. End it? How? That will depend on him. Clara looked at this man, this stubborn, scarred, impossible man, and felt something inside her just break wide open. Fear and hope and rage, everything she had been bottling up for weeks came pouring out. I'm so tired of running, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I know. I am tired of being scared all the time. I know that too, but I will not have you get hurt on my account. Caleb moved a step closer, so near she could feel the warmth from his body. Clara, he said, his voice low and serious. I have been hurt before. I have lost things before. I put my wife in the ground and spent 5 years trying to find a single reason to keep drawing breath. His voice went low. Then you came along, looking like you had been dragged through a keyhole, stealing a piece of bread and staring at me like I was either going to help you or put you out of your misery. I remember it clear. Do you know what I thought, seeing you there in that tattered dress? What? I thought. Now there is a woman who knows the price of staying upright. He reached out, slow and deliberate, his hand just grazing her arm. I am not about to let that fight be for nothing. Not for you, and not for me. Clara's eyes stung with unshed tears. She did not flinch away. If we are going to do this, she said, we do it as one. As one, he agreed. And if it all goes sideways, it will not. But if it does, at least we will know we made a stand for something good. His hand gently tightened on her arm. That is more than most folks ever get. Clara studied him for a long moment. This man had given her shelter, put food in her belly, and kept her safe, asking for nothing in return but an honest day's work. She could not put a name to what she felt for him. It was too fresh, too jumbled up, all tangled with fear and thankfulness and feelings she had no words for. But she knew one thing for certain. She was not running anymore. Tomorrow, she said when he shows up. Tomorrow, Caleb confirmed. That night, Clara did not get a wink of sleep. She sat by the window with a rifle across her lap, her eyes fixed on the empty road. The moon climbed high. The stars wheeled across the vast sky. The night felt long and deathly still. And somewhere in town, in a hotel room, Marcus Weston was laying out his own dark plans. The trouble came sooner than they figured. Clara was washing dishes the next morning when she heard the thunder of hooves. It was not one horse, but several. Caleb was already up, rifle in hand. "You stay inside." "No, Clara," I said, "no." She grabbed her own rifle and took her place at the window. "If he is coming for me, he will find me on my own 2 feet, not cowering in some corner." Caleb gave her a long look, then gave a firm nod. "All right, but you stand behind me." They stepped out onto the porch together. 4 riders were coming their way. 3 of them were hard-looking men in dusty clothes, their guns plain to see on their hips. Riding out front on a black stallion with silver tack was a man in a fancy coat, with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Marcus Weston. A cold knot formed in Clara's stomach. She had forgotten just how much she despised that smile. Marcus pulled up about 20 feet from the porch and held up a hand. The other riders halted behind him. "Clara." His voice was like smooth poison. "There you are." "I have been worried sick about you." Clara said nothing. Marcus's smile stretched wider. "Giving me the silent treatment, is that it? After all I have done for you." "You locked me in my own room," Clara said. "You tried to make me marry you. I was trying to protect you." Marcus shook his head, looking for all the world like a wounded saint. "You were not yourself, Clara. The grief, it clouded your mind. I was only trying to do what was best." By threatening to haul me to the altar. Harsh words were said on both sides, I will admit. But we are family. We can get past this. He spread his hands wide. "Just come on home with me. We will let this all be water under the bridge." No. For just a heartbeat, Marcus's smile wavered. "You heard the lady," Caleb said, his voice low and steady. She said no. Marcus finally turned his gaze to Caleb, as if seeing him for the very first time. "And you must be Caleb Thornton. This is my property." "Ah, the rancher." Marcus's eyes raked over Caleb, taking in the sun-faded shirt, the calloused hands, the rifle he held so steady. "I understand now. You have been giving shelter to my sister-in-law. I gave an honest woman a job. Nothing more to it. Nothing more." Marcus let out a low, ugly chuckle. A single man and a pretty young widow, all alone on a ranch in the back of Beyond. People might get to talking. Let them. The smile disappeared from Marcus's face. "I am taking her home, Mr. Thornton. She is my family. She belongs with her family." "She is a grown woman," Caleb said. "She can decide for herself where she belongs. She is not well. She has not been right since my brother passed. She needs to be cared for, professionally." Clara's grip tightened on her rifle. "I am not crazy, Marcus. Of course you are not, dear, but you do need help, and I intend to see that you get it." Marcus looked back at Caleb. "Step aside, rancher. This is none of your affair." Caleb stood his ground. "I said step aside. I reckon I heard you the first time." Marcus's eyes turned to ice. The pleasant mask was gone, and something hard and mean showed through. "I have 3 men with me," he said. "All of them are armed, and all of them know how to use their guns. Are you sure you want to play this hand?" The silence hung heavy in the air. The horses stamped their feet. One of Marcus's men rested a hand on his pistol. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. This was the moment it all turned. "Caleb," she said softly, "let me talk to him. Clara, please." Caleb looked torn. Then he moved to the side. Clara walked to the edge of the porch. She looked straight at Marcus. Really looked at him for the first time since she had fled. "You murdered a man in Austin," she said. "You made it look like some back-alley robbery." Marcus's face gave nothing away. "That is a mighty serious thing to say. I saw the man's body. I saw the wound. It was no robbery, and you and I both know it. You best be careful, Clara. You poisoned my husband's patients, the ones who could not pay you. I found the records he kept after he died, the ones you thought you got rid of." Marcus's jaw went tight. "You do not have the first clue what you are talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And I have the proof." The lie slipped out smooth as butter. Clara had no proof. Just suspicions, whispers, pieces of conversation she was not meant to hear. But Marcus did not know that. "You are bluffing," he said. "Am I? Then go on and kill me." Clara spread her arms wide. "Right here, right now, with all these fellas watching. See what happens when the sheriff comes asking about my body and finds the letters I left behind." Marcus's hands clenched on the reins. For the first time, a flicker of something like fear showed in his eyes. "You would not dare. I have been running for my life for 2 weeks. I have slept in gullies and eaten scraps. I have had your men hunting me down like an animal." Clara's voice was steady as a rock. "You do not have the slightest idea what I would do." The quiet stretched out. Then Marcus smiled. That slow, hungry smile that made her skin crawl. "Very well," he said. "You want to play games? We can play games." He wheeled his horse around. "But you remember this, Clara. I am a patient man. I can wait. And just when you start to feel safe, that is when I will be there." He spurred his horse and rode off. His men fell in behind him. Clara stood and watched until they were just specks on the horizon. Then her legs turned to water. Caleb was there to catch her before she hit the porch floor. "I got you," he said. "I got you." Clara buried her face in his strong chest and just trembled. Caleb held her tight until the shaking finally eased. Clara was the first to pull away, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I am fine." "No, you are not." "I will be." She straightened her back, finding a core of iron she did not know she possessed. "He will come back. I know. Tonight, or maybe tomorrow. He will not wait long. I made a fool of him in front of his men." Caleb nodded grimly. "Then we had better be ready." They spent the rest of the day getting the place ready for a fight. Caleb boarded up the windows at the back of the house. Clara loaded every single gun they owned. They moved supplies down into the root cellar, water, food, and ammunition, enough to last for days if it came to that. As the sun started to dip low, Caleb found her standing by the window, staring down that empty road. "You ought to eat something," he told her. "Not hungry, Clara," I said. "I am not hungry." She turned to look at him. "That was all a lie, Caleb. About the evidence. I do not have a thing. I figured as much. If he finds out, he will not. Not right away. And by the time he does, it is not going to matter." "Why not?" Caleb's jaw was set like stone. "Because come tomorrow, this whole thing is going to be over, one way or the other." Clara searched his face. "What are you planning to do?" "I am riding into town first thing in the morning." "For what?" "To have a talk with the sheriff." Clara let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "The sheriff? Marcus has the Austin sheriff in his pocket. I would wager he owns the one here, too." "Maybe. But Sheriff Coleman, he owes me one. His little girl took real sick a couple of winters back. High fever. I rode through a nasty blizzard to fetch the doctor. A man remembers something like that. A good memory is not worth much against a pocket full of money." "Sometimes it is." Caleb moved a little closer. I am not asking him to slap irons on Marcus. I am just asking him to be a witness. So whatever goes down tomorrow, there is a lawman who saw it happen. Clara's heart started to pound. You think Marcus will try something out in the open? I think Marcus is a desperate man, and desperate men do foolish things. And if he does not? If he waits and tries to catch me alone? He will not. Caleb's hand found hers and gave it a squeeze. I will not let him. Clara looked down at their hands clasped together. His fingers were rough and scarred, but so warm. She did not pull away. I am scared, she confessed in a small voice. Good. Being scared keeps you sharp. Are you scared? He was quiet for a second. Yes. Of Marcus. And of losing you. The words just hung there in the quiet room. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Caleb, I know. It is too soon. We do not hardly know each other. You are not looking for a new husband, and I am not trying to be one. He let go of her hand. But I want you to know, whatever happens, you matter to me, not because of Sarah, and not because I feel guilty. It is because of you, Clara. She did not know what to say to that. So she said the only thing she could think to say, just do not you get yourself killed tomorrow. His mouth quirked in what was almost a smile. I will do my best. That night they took turns on watch. Clara sat first, that rifle resting heavy on her lap, listening for any sound that did not belong to the Texas night. The long hours just dragged on. Nothing stirred in the darkness. At midnight, Caleb finally took over her watch. You best get some sleep, he told her. You are going to need it. She went to the back room and laid down on that small bed, but her mind just would not shut down. It kept replaying everything. The crooked smile on Marcus's face, the story Caleb had told her, the heavy feel of the rifle. She finally fell asleep sometime around 3 in the morning. She dreamed the world was on fire. The whole ranch was burning in her dream. Flames climbed the walls, eating everything in their path. She ran through the thick smoke, yelling for Caleb, but he never called back. She found him on the porch, laying completely still, with blood pooling on the wood beneath him. She woke up with a scream caught in her throat. The room was black and quiet. There was no fire, no blood, but the fear was still there, cold and heavy. Clara got out of bed and found Caleb in the kitchen. He already had coffee brewing long before the sun was up. Bad dream? He asked. How did you know? You cried out, about 4 o'clock. He poured a cup for her. I almost came in, but I figured you might want your own space. Clara cupped her hands around the warm mug. Thank you. For what? For understanding. They sat there and drank without a word. Outside, the first hint of gray light started to stretch across the sky. I am leaving in an hour, Caleb said. I ought to be back around noon. And if you are not, then you take that back trail over to Ruth's place. Do not wait around for me. Do not come looking. I am not leaving you. Clara, I said. I am not leaving, she said again, setting her cup down firmly. We do this together. You said that yourself. That was before. Before what? His jaw went tight. He did not say a word. Caleb, before what? Before I figured out I could not stand the idea of you getting hurt. His voice was low and rough. If something happens to me, you can make it. You are strong enough, but if something happens to you because I was not quick enough or smart enough, he trailed off. I cannot live with that. Clara stood up. She walked right over to him. She placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. Then you make darn sure nothing happens to either one of us, she said. He put his hand over hers. I will try. Do not try. You succeed. He gave her that little half-smile again. Yes, ma'am. Caleb rode out as the sun came up. Clara stood and watched him go, holding her rifle with her heart lodged in her throat. The road stretched out in front of him, empty and golden in the new light. She waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. The sun got higher in the sky. The heat started to press down on everything like a heavy blanket. At 11 o'clock, the bell rang. Clara snatched the rifle and hurried to the window. A rider was coming in fast. It was not Caleb. The horse was all wrong. She cocked the rifle and waited. The rider got closer and closer. Then she finally saw the face. It was Ruth. Clara lowered the rifle and ran out onto the porch. Ruth was a woman of about 60, with gray hair and skin weathered by the sun. She had arms like ropes and eyes that saw everything. She pulled her horse up hard. The animal lathered in sweat. "Get inside," Ruth said, her voice urgent. "Now! What happened?" "Caleb sent me. There is trouble down in town." Clara felt her blood run cold. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that has that snake Marcus Weston and 6 of his hired guns involved." Ruth swung down from her horse and grabbed Clara's arm. "He has got Caleb pinned down inside the general store. The sheriff is in there too, but they are badly outgunned. I have to go." "No." Caleb was real clear about it. "You stay put. You hide. I am to take you to my place if things head south." Clara pulled her arm away from Ruth's grip. "I am not going to hide while he dies. Girl, you need to listen to me." "No, you listen." Clara's voice was quiet but firm. "I have been running for 2 weeks. I have been hiding. I have been scared out of my mind, and I am done with it." She grabbed her rifle and stuffed extra bullets into her pockets. "You want to help me? Then you tell me the fastest way to get into town without being seen." Ruth just stared at her for a long moment. Then something in her expression changed. Maybe it was respect, or maybe she just recognized a fellow stubborn soul. "The back trail," Ruth said. "It runs through the mesquite and comes out right behind the church. You will have a clear view of the general store from there." "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet." Ruth took her arm again, but her touch was gentle this time. "You get yourself killed and Caleb will never forgive me." Clara looked her straight in the eye. "Then I guess I will not get killed." She ran. The back trail was rough and overgrown, more like a path for deer than for people. Clara's lungs started to burn. Her legs ached something fierce, but she did not slow down. 20 minutes. That is what Ruth told her. 20 minutes to town if she ran the whole way. Clara pushed herself to run even faster. She heard the gunshots long before she saw any buildings. The sharp cracks echoed between the storefronts. She heard shouting and the sound of breaking glass. She ducked behind the church and pressed her back against the cool wall, breathing hard. From there, she could see the general store. 3 men were hunkered down behind a water trough, shooting at the windows. 3 more were on the roof of the building across the street. And there, standing in the doorway of the store, was Caleb. He was alive. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was alive. The sheriff was crouched down next to him, an older fellow with a badge and a shotgun. They were caught in a crossfire, completely pinned down. Clara counted the men. 6, just like Ruth had said. But Marcus was nowhere to be seen. Where was he? She scanned the street, the rooftops, the alley next to the hotel, and there he was. Marcus was standing in the shadows, just watching. He was not fighting, just watching the whole thing like a man taking in a Sunday show. Clara's hands tightened on her rifle. She could take the shot from right here. It was 50 yards, a clear line of sight. She had been practicing every day. She knew she could do it. But if she missed, they would all know where she was. And that would just give Caleb another problem to deal with. She had to get closer. Clara slipped around the back of the buildings, moving quiet as a mouse with her rifle at the ready. She came out in the alley right behind the hotel, about 20 feet from where Marcus was standing. He had not seen her. She brought the rifle up and aimed it at his back. "Turn around," she said. Marcus went still. Then, ever so slowly, he turned. He wore that same smile he always did, charming and completely empty. "Clara, you came. Call them off." "Who?" "Your men. You call them off or I will shoot you right where you stand." Marcus just laughed. "You will not shoot me. You are not a killer. You do not know what I am anymore. I know exactly what you are." He took a step toward her. "You are a scared little widow who is just playing at being brave. You are in way over your head, Clara. You have always been in over your head. One more step, and I pull this trigger." He stopped. "And then what?" "My men hear the shot. They come running. They will kill your rancher, the sheriff, and then they'll put you down." He opened his hands wide. "Is that what you're after?" Clara's fingers shook on the trigger. He wasn't wrong. A part of her knew he was speaking the truth, but she couldn't give in. Not this time. Never again. "Call them off," she repeated. "Right now." Marcus just looked at her. It was that same cold, sizing-up stare she'd seen across 100 dinner tables, 100 talks where she felt like a calf being measured for slaughter. "Let me offer you something else," he said. "You come along with me right now. No trouble, no noise. And I'll let your rancher friend keep breathing." "No. Now you think on it, Clara. Really think. You've known this fella for what? A couple of weeks? 3? You're willing to die for him? Let him die for you?" "Yes." The word escaped her lips before she could catch it. And right then, Clara knew it was the honest truth. Marcus's eyes narrowed to slits. "You've gone and fallen for him. That ain't your concern." "Oh, but it is." "Oh, you were meant to be mine. I was never yours. I never belonged to anyone. Your husband seemed to think otherwise. My husband respected me. He loved me. He never tried to own me. And see where that got him." Marcus's tone turned sharp and cruel. "In a ditch with dirt on his coffin before he was even cold, all because he was too damn weak to take what was his." Clara's hands went still. The shaking was gone. "Thomas was double the man you could ever hope to be," she said. "And I would sooner die than live one more minute under your shadow." She squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed, going wide. She'd been aiming for his shoulder, but her hands moved at the very last second. The bullet tore through his arm. Instead, Marcus let out a scream. Clara turned and ran. She could hear men yelling behind her, the sound of boots on dirt, the sharp crack of a pistol. She didn't dare look back. She flew out of the alley and onto the main street. Caleb saw her. His eyes grew wide. "Clara!" She ran straight for him, for the general store, for the only safe place she could think of. A bullet sang past her ear. She dove for cover behind the town's water trough. Caleb grabbed her by the arm and pulled her inside the store. "What in the hell are you doing out there?" "Trying to save your hide by getting yourself killed. I shot Marcus." Caleb just stared at her. "You what?" "I shot him. Just grazed his arm." She reloaded the rifle, her hands trembling. "Well, he ain't gonna be too pleased about that. No, I reckon he won't." The sheriff came up beside them. "Who's this?" "Clara Weston, the woman they're looking for." The sheriff's eyebrows shot clean up to his hairline. "And she shot Weston?" "She sure did. Austin over a card game, debt. He gave poison to patients who couldn't settle their bills. You really think he won't burn down a building?" Caleb's jaw clenched tight. The sheriff took a step forward. "I ain't gonna let you go out there. You can't stop me, girl. My name is Clara, and I am through with hiding." She got to her feet. "If I go out, maybe he'll let the rest of you live. And maybe he'll shoot you dead before you take 3 steps. Caleb took her by the arm. "You're not going anywhere, Caleb." "No." His voice broke. "I already lost one woman because I wasn't there to help. I am not about to lose another one because she was too damn stubborn to stay put." Clara looked at him, saw the raw fear in his eyes, the desperation. "Then what are we going to do?" she whispered. Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then he turned his head to the sheriff. "Coleman, is there still a back door on this place?" Leads right into the alley, but they got a man watching it, just one man that I could see. Alive, he said. He kissed her. It was quick and hard and full of desperation. His hand came up to the back of her neck, pulling her in. She could taste the dust and blood and something else entirely, something that felt a lot like hope. And just like that, he was gone. Out the back door and into the alley. Clara turned to the sheriff. How are we supposed to keep them talking? Coleman gave a grim little smile. I might have a few ideas. Outside, Marcus's voice echoed again. 30 seconds, Clara. She walked to the window. I'm right here, Marcus. Then come on out. I'm not coming out. Then you're gonna burn. Maybe so, but you'll burn right along with me. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. Y'all hear that, boys? Your boss is fixing to light a fire under a building right in the middle of town. How do you suppose the good folks here will take that? How do you think the territorial marshal's gonna feel when word gets to him? Silence. Clara pushed harder. You've already got assault, attempted murder, and conspiracy on your heads. You want to add arson to that list? You want to swing from a rope all for Marcus Weston's little grudge? She saw one of the men shift on his feet from the window. She could see the doubt starting to creep in. She's lying, Marcus hollered. Don't you listen to a word she says. Am I? The sheriff asked, his voice booming. He's standing right beside me. Been watching this whole mess unfold. Coleman stepped up next to her. She's telling you all the truth, boys. Everything that happens here today is going in my official report. Every last bit of it. More nervous shifting. The men started looking at each other. You got families, Clara called out. You got jobs, lives back home. Is this worth dying for? Is Marcus Weston worth dying for? A long, heavy silence hung in the air. Then one of the men lowered his rifle. I didn't sign on for this, he mumbled. I was paid to find a woman, not to fight a whole town. Get back in line, Marcus snarled. No, sir. I'm through. The man turned his back and just walked away. Another one followed him, and then the next. Soon Marcus was standing there all alone, with just one fella beside him. His face was a dark shade of purple with fury. Blood was dripping from his hurt arm. You think this is over? He screamed. This ain't nowhere near over. I will find you. I don't care where you run. I will find you. A single shot cracked the air. Marcus stumbled. His last man dropped his gun and ran for his life. Clara looked past Marcus up to the rooftop across the way. Caleb was standing there, his rifle raised high, a little curl of smoke drifting from the barrel. Marcus sank down to his knees. He looked down at the new hole in his chest. Then his eyes found Clara's. You, he choked out. It's over, Marcus. The light went out of his eyes. He pitched forward and fell into the dusty street. He didn't move again. Clara stood in the doorway of the general store, her rifle hanging loose in her hands, just watching the man who had haunted her dreams bleed out onto the road. She didn't feel a thing. Not victory, not relief, just a big empty space where all the fear used to be. Caleb came up beside her. He didn't say anything. He just reached out, took her hand, and held on tight. The sheriff walked past them, bent down to check Marcus's body, and then shook his head. He's gone, he said. Clara just nodded. Now you folks want to tell me exactly what went on here? Caleb looked at her. She looked back at him. Self-defense? Clara said, her voice clear. He threatened our lives. He was going to burn down the building. We were just defending ourselves. The sheriff looked at her for a long, hard moment. Then he let out a heavy sigh. That pretty much matches what I saw, he said. I'll write up my report that way. Thank you. Don't go thanking me. Just be out of my town by the time the sun goes down. He tipped his hat. Ma'am Thornton. And with that, he walked off, leaving them alone with the body and the quiet. Caleb turned to face her. You all right? Clara looked at Marcus one last time, at the man who had tried to possess her, to control her, to break her. I will be, she said, and for the very first time, she knew it was true. They rode back to the ranch without a word between them. Clara's hands just wouldn't quit shaking. She gripped the saddle horn so tight her knuckles turned bone white, but the trembling wouldn't stop. She had shot a man. She had watched him die, and she felt numb. That scared her more than Marcus ever did. Caleb rode right beside her, close enough to reach out if she started to fall. He hadn't spoken a single word since they left town. His face was like stone, impossible to read. When they finally got back to the ranch, he helped her down from her horse. His hands stayed on her waist a moment too long. "You ought to get some rest," he said. "I can't, Clara. I killed him." The words came out all flat and empty. "I shot him, and he died. I shot at him. I started the whole thing. If I hadn't nicked him back in that alley, then he would have burned that store down with all of us still inside." Caleb's grip on her waist tightened. "You did what you had to do to survive." "Same as me." Clara looked up at him. Her eyes felt hot and dry, but there were no tears. "Does it ever get easier?" she asked. No, his voice was rough with honesty. "But you learn how to carry the weight of it." She leaned into his chest. He wrapped his arms all the way around her, and they just stood like that for what felt like an eternity. The sun was beating down. The horses nickered softly nearby. And after a while, the shaking finally stopped. That night, Clara could not get to sleep. She lay there on that narrow bed, just staring at the ceiling, playing that moment over and over in her head. The feel of the gun in her hands, the bullet leaving the barrel. The look on Marcus's face when he realized she had actually done it. She got up and padded barefoot into the kitchen. Caleb was already there. He was sitting at the table with a glass of whiskey in front of him, and another glass already poured and waiting. He looked up as she walked in. "Could not sleep either, huh?" She shook her head and sat down across from him. She picked up the waiting glass. "I have never killed anyone before," she said. "I never even really thought about it. Not for real. The first time is always the hardest." "Is there a second time?" "Sometimes." He took a long swallow of his whiskey. "During the war, after. Men who came for the cattle, men who came for worse." He set his glass down. "It does not make you a bad person, Clara. It just makes you a survivor." "What if I do not want to be a survivor? What if I just want to be normal?" "Normal does not really exist out here. I do not think it ever did." She took a drink. The whiskey burned all the way down. "He said I was weak," Clara murmured. "Marcus. He said I was a scared little widow just playing at being brave." "He was wrong." "Was he? I feel like I've been running my whole life. From my father, from my marriage, from Marcus. I have never stood and fought for a single thing." Caleb leaned forward. "You stood and fought today, and you put up a fight. You came out on top. Luck had nothing to do with it." He reached his hand across the table and covered hers. "You made a tough decision, one of the hardest there is, and you saw it through to the end. That requires a brand of courage most folks will never understand." Clara looked down at their hands together. His fingers were calloused and scarred from work. Hers seemed so much smaller and paler beside his. "What comes next?" she asked. "What do you want to come next?" "I have no idea. I was so busy just trying to stay alive. I never gave a single thought to what might happen after." "Well," Caleb gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "You have plenty of time now to figure all that out." "Do I really?" She lifted her eyes to meet his. "Marcus is gone, but his family is still around. His business partners, the people he owed money to. Someone is bound to come around asking questions." "Let them come," Caleb said. "I mean that. Whatever is heading our way, we will stand and face it together." He held her gaze steadily. "Unless you've had a change of heart about staying here." A pang went through Clara's chest. "I have not changed my mind." "Good." He let go of her hand and got to his feet. "Go get some rest. Tomorrow we can begin putting the pieces of your life back together." She watched him walk toward the door. "Caleb?" He stopped. "Thank you for absolutely everything." He glanced back at her. A certain hardness in his expression seemed to melt away. "You are welcome, Clara." And then he was gone. The following days were a blur, passing in a strange and quiet fog. Clara moved through her chores, cooking meals, tidying up, lending a hand with the horses, but her thoughts were a million miles away. She was caught in that one moment, trapped in its aftermath. Caleb gave her the room she needed. He did not press her for answers. He did not pry. He just made sure to stay near enough for her to know he was there. On the fourth day, a horseman arrived. Clara heard the yard bell and instinctively grabbed the rifle. But when she peered through the window, she realized it was not a threat. It was the sheriff. She put the rifle back in its place and went to open the door. Coleman swung down from his horse, moving slow. He looked bone-tired, older than he had seemed back in town. "Ma'am," he said, giving a nod and tipping his hat. "Sheriff, what brings you all the way out here?" "Official business." He cut his eyes toward the barn. "Is Thornton around?" "He is out mending a fence line in the east pasture. He ought to be back in an hour or so." "Do you mind if I wait?" "Please, come in. I will put on a pot of coffee." They took seats at the kitchen table, the very one where she had sat with Caleb right after the shooting. Coleman cradled the warm cup with both hands and let out a long sigh. "I have some news," he said. "I thought it was best you heard it directly from me." A knot formed in Clara's stomach. "What sort of news is it?" Marcus Weston had a last will and testament. It was filed with an attorney down in Austin. He left his entire estate to his brother, Thomas. Thomas is dead. I am aware. Which, according to the lawyer, means everything passes to Thomas's widow. Coleman looked straight at her. "That would be you, Mrs. Weston." Clara just blinked. "What?" "The house, his medical practice, all the investments, every bit of it." Coleman set his cup down on the table. "Marcus was a man of considerable wealth, and now all of it is yours." Clara's head was swimming. That cannot possibly be right. Surely there are other relatives, other people to inherit. None that the lawyer was able to locate. Marcus was the last of his family line. Coleman paused for a moment. "And there is more. The investigation into what Marcus was involved in, the man he killed back in Austin, the patients of his who passed away under very strange circumstances." Coleman's voice took on a harder edge. "They have started a complete inquiry. Your name was brought up." A chill went down Clara's spine. "My name?" "As a person who might be a witness. They are interested in what you might know." "I do not know. I did not know anything. Take it easy." Coleman raised a hand to calm her. "You are not in any trouble. Not at this time, anyway. But they will have questions for you, a whole lot of them. You probably ought to start thinking about what you plan to say." Clara leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had lied to Marcus about having proof. But if a real inquiry started, if they dug deep enough— "There is something else," she said, her voice slow and careful. "Something I did not mention to you in town." Coleman lifted an eyebrow. "I am listening." Clara drew in a steadying breath. "I led Marcus to believe I had evidence against him. I told him I had records, documents, all the proof needed of what he did. And did you? No, it was a bluff. I was just trying to create some time for myself." Coleman was silent for a long moment. Then he gave a slow nod. "A smart play. But if I give testimony, if they put me under oath and ask me, then you tell them the God's honest truth. You tell them what you suspected. You tell them everything you heard, everything you saw, and you let them figure out what to do with that information. What if that is not enough? It might not be." Coleman stood up and picked his hat off the table. "But here is the situation, Mrs. Weston. Marcus is dead and buried. The people he caused harm to, the families who lost the ones they loved, they deserve some answers about what happened, even if it is not enough to get a conviction, even if it just brings them some peace of mind." Clara stared down at her own hands. "You believe I should testify? I believe you should do whatever it is you can live with afterward." Coleman walked to the door. "The attorney's name is Harrison. He is located in Austin. He will be expecting to hear from you. When? Soon, I would imagine, within the next week. He stopped at the doorway. One last thing. Yes? That shot, the one that ended Marcus's life. Coleman's eyes locked with hers. The official report states it was an act of self-defense, a justified shooting to protect life and property. Clara held her breath. That is how it is going to remain, Coleman stated plainly, unless somebody starts raising questions that I find myself unable to answer. He tipped his hat and walked out the door. Clara sat by herself in the kitchen, the coffee long since gone cold, and she felt the full weight of everything she had tried so hard to escape come crashing down on her again. Caleb found her there an hour later, still sitting at the same table. "Clara," he said, walking toward her, "what is wrong?" "I saw Coleman's horse riding away down the road." She told him the whole story. Everything about the inheritance, the official inquiry, the need for her testimony. When she had finished, Caleb leaned back. "Well, I will be. So, you are a wealthy woman now. I do not want his money. It does not matter a bit if you want it or not. It belongs to you. It is blood money. Every single cent of it was made from his lies and from death. Then take it and create something good from it." Caleb leaned forward earnestly. "You could build a hospital. You could fund a school. Do anything you want with it, but do not just let it sit and rot because you feel guilty about how you got it." Clara just shook her head. "You do not get it. If I accept that money, I become a part of who he was, a part of everything he did. No, you become the person who survived him, the person who took the worst he had to offer and spun it into something better." He reached out for her hand. "That is not guilt you are feeling, Clara. That is what victory feels like." She looked up at him. "Really?" "Looked. You make it all sound so simple. It is not simple, but nothing worthwhile ever is." Clara felt a tightness in her chest. She turned her hand over in his, lacing her fingers with his. "I have to travel to Austin," she said. "I'm aware there will be questions, very hard ones, about Thomas, about Marcus, and about what I knew and when I knew it. I am aware of that too. Will you go there with me?" Caleb's hand tightened around hers. "You want me to be there?" "I do not want to face it by myself." He was quiet for a second. Then he gave a firm nod. "I will come with you." They set out for Austin 3 days after that. The trip took a full 2 days by wagon. Clara sat on the seat next to Caleb, watching the scenery slowly change. The wide, flat emptiness of the ranch land gave way to gentle rolling hills, small clusters of towns, and the first signs of a city. She had fled down this very road in the other direction only weeks before, bleeding, scared to death, and half-starved. Now she rode sitting upright, with food in her belly, safe, with a man beside her who asked for nothing from her except her trust. It was strange how much things could change. They rolled into Austin as the sun was setting. Caleb secured them rooms at a boarding house on the quiet edge of town. It was a clean place, run by a widow named Mrs. Carpenter, who did not ask any prying questions and served supper at 6 o'clock sharp. That evening, Clara stood by the window in her room, gazing out at the lights of the city. Somewhere out in that darkness was the house she had escaped from, the church where Marcus had intended to marry her against her will, the very street she had run down in terror, her heart hammering, positive she was about to die. A knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Caleb standing in the hallway, his hat held in his hands. "I saw you had a light on," he said. "Is everything all right?" "I am not sure." She moved aside to let him come in. "It just feels so strange to be back in this place. Do you want me to stay for a bit?" "I do not." She paused. "Yes, I would like you to stay." He came inside and took a seat in the chair near the window. She sat on the corner of the bed for a long time. The silence hung between them, but it was not uncomfortable. "I was married here," Clara said at last, "in that church over on 5th Street. Thomas wore his father's old suit. It was a little too big for him in the shoulders. Caleb just listened. We had a happy life for a little while before the cholera came, before our world fell apart. She looked down at her own hands. I used to think that was all my life would ever be. A wife, then a widow, then a victim. I could not imagine any other path. And now I have no idea who I am. She looked up at him. Does that sound crazy? No, that sounds honest. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. Like the solid ground I have been walking on my entire life just vanished, and there is nothing but empty air below. Caleb got up, crossed the room, and sat down on the bed beside her. There is something underneath you, he said softly. You just are not able to see it yet. What is it? Whatever you choose to build. His hand found hers in the quiet room. You are not a wife anymore. You are not a widow. You are not a victim. You are Clara. And that is enough. Her eyes began to burn with unshed tears. What if it is not enough? Then we will work on it together. She looked at him. This man who had taken her in with no questions asked, who had fought for her without ever expecting a single thing, and who looked at her like she was somebody worth saving. Why? She whispered. Why do you keep doing this? Doing what? Being kind, being patient, staying right here when anyone else would have already walked away. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he finally spoke. Because I have spent 5 years building walls around myself, keeping everybody out, telling myself I was just fine on my own. He paused. Then you showed up, half dead and stubborn as all get out, and for the first time in a very long time, I wanted to let someone in. Clara's breath caught in her chest. Caleb, I am not asking you for anything. I know you have been through hell. I know you need your time. His thumb traced little circles on her palm. But I want you to know, whatever happens with the lawyers, the investigation, all of that, I will be here for as long as you will have me. She did not know what to say, so she did the only thing that made any sense. She kissed him. It was not like that kiss in the store, all desperate and rushed. This was slow, and it was deliberate. It was a question and an answer all at the same time. His hand came up and cupped her face. She leaned into his touch. When they finally broke apart, she was trembling. But it was not from fear. Stay, she whispered. Tonight. Just stay. He nodded. They did not do anything more than that. They just lay there together in the narrow bed, her head on his chest, and his arm wrapped around her shoulders. The night was long and quiet. For the very first time since she had run, Clara felt like she was in exactly the right place. The next morning they went into town to see the lawyer. Harrison was a skinny man with spectacles and a frown that looked like it was permanent. He sat behind a desk buried under a mountain of paperwork, sizing Clara up like she was a stray he had to deal with. Mrs. Weston, I was expecting you all. I figured as much. Please, have a seat. He pointed to 2 chairs. Caleb took one, and Clara settled into the other. I am going to be plain with you, Harrison said. Your brother-in-law's estate is a sizable fortune. We are talking properties, investments, and cold hard cash. At a bare minimum, it is somewhere around $50,000. Clara could not help but let her mouth fall open. However, Harrison went on, there are a few snags. What sort of snags? Debts for one, and legal fights. A number of folks have come forward saying Marcus owed them. Others are claiming he flat-out swindled them. Harrison rustled some papers on his desk. And on top of all that, there is this official inquiry. I have heard tell of it. The investigators are surely going to want a word with you. Seeing as you are Thomas's widow and Marcus's only heir, you are in a unique spot. You might just have some piece of information they find useful. What kind of information? His eyes locked onto hers. That is exactly what they are aiming to find out. Clara leaned back in her chair. And what if I do not feel like talking? That is your right, of course, but it is going to stir up some mighty uncomfortable questions. Harrison leaned across the desk. My advice? You tell them everything you know. The whole truth and nothing but. Get this cleared up proper before anybody can start pointing fingers. And the inheritance. Once this inquiry is done and the debts are paid off, what is left is yours, free and clear. He paused. It could take months, possibly. Longer, but that money will be there. Clara glanced over at Caleb, who gave her a small, sure nod. All right, she said. Go on and set up the meeting. The inquiry took place 3 days later. Clara sat in a stuffy little room looking across a table at 2 investigators from the Territorial Marshal's office. For 3 solid hours, they grilled her about Thomas, about Marcus, and about that awful night she ran for her life. She laid it all out for them. The threats being locked in that room, the desperate escape through the window, the weeks she spent on the run, and the final confrontation right in the middle of town. She left nothing out. When she was finally done talking, the lead investigator leaned back. Mrs. Weston, you have been mighty helpful. Does this mean I can leave now? Not just yet. He shared a look with his partner. There is one last thing we need to discuss. A cold dread washed over Clara. We got a message from a witness down in Austin, someone who says they saw Marcus Weston's dirty dealings firsthand. Who is it? A woman by the name of Lydia Crane. She worked as a nurse at your husband's practice. The blood drained from Clara's face. Lydia. She remembered that woman. Always quiet, always watching, always lingering around Thomas's office. What is she saying? She claims Marcus poisoned several patients, the ones who could not pay their bills. She says she has proof. The investigator leaned in close. She also claims you knew all about it. That is a bald-faced lie. Is it now? I had my suspicions after Thomas died, but I did not know for certain. Well, then, I suppose you will not have a problem with us bringing Mrs. Crane in to testify. Clara's hands tightened into fists. Bring her. I am not hiding a single thing. The investigator gave her a smile that did not reach his eyes. We will see about that. Clara walked out of that office with her head held high, but her heart was hammering. Caleb was waiting right outside. How did it go? They are bringing in a witness, someone who says I knew all about Marcus's crimes. Caleb's face went hard as stone. Did you? I suspected things, but I did not know for sure. She looked him square in the eye. I swear it, Caleb. I did not know. He studied her for a long moment. Then he gave a slow nod. I believe you, even if nobody else does. Even then. He took her hand. Come on, let's get ourselves out of here. They walked through the streets of Austin, past the church where she was nearly forced to marry, past the very house she had to jump from a window to escape. Clara kept her eyes fixed straight ahead. She did not look back. At the edge of town, Caleb stopped. There is something I need to tell you, he said. Clara's heart clenched tight. What is it? I have been thinking about what comes next after all this is over, and he turned to face her. I want you to come back to the ranch, not as a housekeeper, and not as an employee. Clara's breath caught. Then, as what? As my wife. The word hung in the still air. Clara just stared at him. Caleb, I know this is happening fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks, and I know you said you were not looking for a husband. He took both of her hands in his, but I'm asking anyway because I love you, Clara, and I cannot imagine my life without you being in it. Clara's eyes filled up with tears. You love me more than I ever thought I could love anyone again. She looked at this man, this stubborn, scarred and impossible man who had saved her life and asked for nothing in return but her trust. Yes, she said. Caleb blinked. Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I love you too. Yes, I will come back to the ranch and build a life with you. She laughed right through her tears. Yes, to all of it. He pulled her in close and kissed her hard, right there in the middle of the street with the whole world watching. Clara did not care one bit. For the first time in her life, she was exactly where she wanted to be. The next 3 days were the longest of Clara's life. She paced the boarding house floor until Mrs. Carpenter threatened to charge her for brand new floorboards. She barely ate, and she barely slept. Every knock at the door made her jump. Lydia Crane was coming, and whatever she said could destroy everything. On the 4th morning, the summons arrived. Clara dressed carefully. She wore the simple blue dress she had made back at the ranch. Her hair was pinned back neatly. She wore no jewelry, except for the thin gold band that had belonged to Thomas. She had kept it hidden away in her pocket all these weeks. Caleb waited for her at the bottom of the stairs. "Ready?" "No, that is honest." He offered his arm. "Let's go anyway." The hearing room was small and crowded. The 2 investigators sat at a long table. Behind them, a row of chairs was set for witnesses. And there in the corner was a woman Clara had not seen in 2 years. Lydia Crane. She was thinner than Clara remembered, and she looked older. Her eyes had a haunted quality that had not been there before. Clara sat down. Caleb took the seat right behind her. "Mrs. Weston." The lead investigator shuffled some papers. "We have called this hearing to address certain claims that were made by Mrs. Crane. You will have the opportunity to respond after her testimony. I understand. Mrs. Crane, please proceed." Lydia stood up. Her hands trembled just a little as she gripped the rail. "I worked for Dr. Thomas Weston for 3 years," she began. "I was his primary nurse. I saw everything that happened in that practice." Clara held her breath. "After Dr. Weston died, his brother Marcus took over. At first, I thought he was just grieving that he was overwhelmed. But then patients started dying. Which patients? The poor ones, the ones who could not pay." Lydia's voice cracked. "Marcus would visit them alone, and within a matter of days they were dead." The investigator leaned forward. "Did you witness these visits?" "Some of them, not all of them." Lydia looked down. "I knew something was wrong, but I was afraid. Marcus, he had a way of making people afraid. And Mrs. Weston, what was her involvement in this?" Lydia hesitated. Her eyes flickered toward Clara. "Mrs. Weston was." The room held its breath. "Mrs. Weston was a victim, same as the rest of us." Clara's heart stopped dead. "Could you elaborate?" Lydia nodded slowly. "Marcus controlled everything after Thomas died. The money, the practice, and the household. Mrs. Weston tried to fight him, but he threatened her. He told her if she went to the authorities, he would have her committed to an asylum. Did you witness these threats?" "Once in the parlor, he grabbed her arm so hard I thought he might break it. He told her no one would believe a hysterical widow over a respected businessman." The investigator turned to Clara. "Is this accurate?" Clara's throat was tight. "Yes, he threatened me multiple times." "Why did you not come forward?" "Because I was afraid. Because I had nowhere to go. Because every time I tried to speak up, he reminded me that his cousin was the sheriff and his friends ran the courts." Her voice hardened. "Because in this world, a woman's word means nothing against a man with money." There was a heavy silence. Lydia spoke again. "I have something else. Something I should have shared years ago." She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather journal. Thomas Weston's records. The real ones, not the ones Marcus kept for the authorities. She handed it to the investigator. "He gave them to me before he died. He asked me to keep them safe." Clara stared. "Thomas gave you." "He knew." Lydia's eyes met hers. He knew what his brother was. He was gathering evidence, trying to build a case, but the cholera came before he could finish. The investigator opened the journal. His eyebrows rose. "These are comprehensive. Thomas documented everything, every suspicious death, every discrepancy, every single payment Marcus took under the table." Lydia's voice broke. "He was going to expose him. And I think Marcus knew. I think that is why Thomas stayed behind when the cholera came. He knew Marcus would never let him leave alive." Clara's world tilted. "You are saying Marcus killed Thomas?" I am saying Thomas chose to die on his own terms rather than let Marcus destroy him. Lydia wiped her eyes. He loved you, Mrs. Weston. Everything he did was to protect you. Clara could not speak. She could not move. The room blurred all around her. Caleb's hand found her shoulder. It was steady and warm. Mrs. Weston. The investigator's voice was gentler now. Do you need a moment? No, she forced the word out. No, I want to finish this. The hearing continued for another hour. There were more questions, more answers. The journal was entered into evidence. Statements were taken from both women. When it was over, the lead investigator stood up. Based on the testimony and the documentation provided, this inquiry finds no evidence of wrongdoing on the part of Clara Weston. Furthermore, we will be forwarding this journal to the territorial prosecutor for further investigation into Marcus Weston's activities. Clara closed her eyes and let out a breath she had been holding for years. Mrs. Weston, you are free to go. Caleb helped her stand. Her legs were shaking. Outside, the sun was blinding. Clara stopped on the courthouse steps, blinking in the light. Clara, she turned. Lydia stood behind her. I am sorry. Lydia's voice was barely a whisper. I should have come forward sooner. I should have. You did what you could. Clara reached out and took her hand. We both did. He loved you, Thomas did. More than anything, I know. Clara squeezed her hand. I know he did. Lydia nodded, wiped her eyes. Then she turned and walked away. Clara watched her go. Then she looked at Caleb. Take me home, she said. He did not need to be told twice. They left Austin that afternoon. The journey back felt different, lighter. Clara sat beside Caleb on the wagon seat, watching the landscape unfold, and felt something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. You are quiet, Caleb said. I am thinking about Thomas. About everything. She looked at him. He knew all along. He knew what Marcus was. And he stayed anyway, died anyway, trying to protect me. That is a heavy thing to carry. Yes, she was quiet for a moment. But it also makes sense now why he sent me away, why he did not tell me what he was doing. He knew if Marcus suspected I was involved, he would come for me. Smart man. He was. Clara leaned against Caleb's shoulder. I spent so long being angry at him for leaving me, for making choices without me, but he was trying to save me the only way he knew how. Does that change how you feel? It changes everything and nothing. She closed her eyes. I loved him. I will always love him. But he is gone, and you are here. Caleb did not answer. He just put his arm around her and held on. They reached the ranch at sunset. Clara climbed down from the wagon and stood in the yard looking at the house, the barn, the fences stretching toward the horizon. Home. The word still felt strange, but it fit better now than it ever had before, ever felt before. Clara, Caleb was standing right beside her. I got something to show you. He walked her out behind the barn, over to a plot of land she had not paid any mind to. It was a small fenced-in patch, tended with care, with 2 wooden markers right in the middle. Sarah, Clara whispered, and my mother. Caleb took off his hat. I laid them to rest here. Reckoned they would want to be near the house. Clara knelt down next to the markers. The wood was old and grayed by the weather, but you could still read the names. Hello, Sarah, she said. My name is Clara. I surely hope you would understand why I am here. Caleb stood quietly behind her. I am going to marry your husband. Now, I know that must sound awful strange, but I give you my word, I will look after him, just the way you would have wanted. She placed her hand on the wooden marker. Thank you for loving him, for making him into the man he is today. When she got to her feet, Caleb had tears in his eyes. You did not have to go and do that. Yes, I did. She reached for his hand. She is a part of you, a part of this ranch. I wanted her to know. I understand. He pulled her in close and held on to her tight. I love you, he said. Lord, have mercy, I love you. Then marry me tomorrow. Today, right this minute. He laughed, a genuine laugh, deep and warm. The preacher man does not ride this way until Sunday. Well then, Sunday it is. They headed back toward the house together, holding hands. The few days leading up to the wedding went by in a flash of getting things ready, and Ruth came by to lend a hand. She brought fabric for a new dress and a whole mess of opinions on everything else. Clara did not mind one bit. It felt nice to have someone making a fuss over her for all the right reasons. You absolutely certain about this? Ruth asked while she pinned up the hem on Clara's dress. I have never been more certain about anything in my life. He is a good man, stubborn as a mule and twice as ornery, but he is good. I know. Ruth sat back on her heels and just looked at her. You have changed a whole lot since you first came here. Have I? When you first showed up, you looked like a spook, like you had forgotten how to be alive. She smiled. Now you just look like yourself. Clara felt the material of the dress. It was plain white, a world away from the one she had run away from. I feel like myself for the first time in so many years. Sunday came, bright and clear as a bell. The preacher showed up right around noon. He was a small fellow with a big voice, carrying a Bible that had surely seen better days. He set himself up on the porch while Clara got dressed inside. Ruth helped her with all the little buttons, tucked a flower into her hair, then took a step back and smiled. Beautiful. Feeling nervous? Good. That just means you care. Ruth gave her hand a squeeze. You ready? Clara looked into the mirror at the woman she saw there. Stronger than she had ever been before. Braver. And finally whole. Ready. She stepped out onto the porch. Caleb was standing by the rail in his best shirt, the very one she had mended during her first week on the ranch. He had combed his hair. His face was shaved clean. He looked at her like she was the morning sunrise. Clara. His voice was thick with emotion. Caleb. The preacher opened his Bible. Dearly beloved. The service was short and simple. They had no need for a lot of fancy words. They had already said everything that truly mattered. Do you, Caleb Thornton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Clara Weston, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Clara looked right at Caleb, at this man who had found her trying to steal bread and gave her a life instead, who had stood up for her, had faith in her, and loved her even when she had forgotten how to love herself. I do. In that case, by the power the good Lord has vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The preacher grinned. You may now kiss your bride. Caleb drew her near. The kiss was gentle and sure. It was a promise fulfilled. Ruth let out a cheer. The preacher laughed out loud. And Clara Thornton walked right into her new life. The weeks that came after were the happiest Clara had ever known. She fell into the rhythm of the ranch, from the chores at sunrise to the rest at sunset, and all the quiet times in between when she and Caleb would just sit on the porch and watch the day come to a close. She wrote a letter to the lawyer down in Austin, telling him to sell off everything Marcus had left her, and to use that money to open up a clinic for poor folks. She knew Thomas would have wanted that. She never heard another word from Lydia. But she thought about her from time to time and hoped she had found some peace of her own. One evening, about a month after they got married, Caleb walked in from the barn with something tucked behind his back. What is that? A little something for you. For what? For being my wife. He held out a little wooden box. Go on now, open it. Clara lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a small bed of cotton, was a silver ring. It was simple and graceful, with 2 words carved into it. Forever yours. Her eyes started to well up with tears. Caleb, I know it is not a whole lot. I am not a rich man, but I wanted you to have something. Something that was all your own. Clara slipped the ring right onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. "It is everything," she said. "It is more than everything." He gathered her into his arms. She rested her head against his chest. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." He kissed the top of her head. "Forever. Forever." That night they sat out on the porch while the stars began to pop out in the sky. Clara leaned her head against Caleb, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, and felt a kind of peace she never thought was possible. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything at all. That day you caught me stealing your bread. Why did you not just shoot me?" Caleb was quiet for a second. "Well, I thought about it for about half a second. What was it that changed your mind? Your eyes." He looked down at her. They were not the eyes of some thief. They were the eyes of somebody who had been fighting for so long they had forgotten there was any other way to live. A lump formed in Clara's throat. "And you recognized that? I had seen it in the mirror." He held her just a little bit closer. "Every single day since Sarah passed on. Every morning when I would wonder why I even bothered to get out of bed. And now, well, now I know why." He kissed her on the forehead. "Because you were on your way. I just had to wait for you." Clara smiled right through her tears. "That is the most romantic thing anybody has ever said to me. Do not get used to it. I have got a reputation to uphold." She let out a laugh. He laughed too. And for a good long while they just sat there together. Two souls who had found one another in the middle of nowhere. Two people who had decided to build something up instead of burning it all down. Years down the road, Clara would look back on that summer as the time her whole life changed. It was the moment she finally stopped running, and the moment she truly started living. She and Caleb worked that ranch into something strong, something that would last. They raised horses that took home prizes from the county fair. They took in all kinds of strays, both animals and people, and gave them a place where they could belong. Ruth became part of the family. Sheriff Coleman would stop by for Sunday dinners. The town that had once been filled with strangers soon became their community. Clara never forgot about Thomas. She kept his ring in a little box by her bed, right next to the one that Caleb had given her. Two different loves, two different lives, and both of them were a part of who she had become. And sometimes on those quiet evenings, she would walk out to that little cemetery behind the barn and sit down next to Sarah's marker. "Thank you," she would say, "for sharing him with me." The wind would whisper through the tall grass, and Clara would smile, knowing deep down she was not alone. On the 5th anniversary of the day she first came to the ranch, Caleb woke her up at dawn. "Come with me." "Where are we going?" "Just come on." He led her outside, past the barn, past the little cemetery, and all the way to the top of a small hill where they could see the entire ranch spread out right below them. "Look," he said. Clara looked. The sun was just starting to rise over the land. Their land. A golden light was pouring across the fields, over the fences, and onto the house where she had made a home. "5 years ago, a scared woman tried to steal bread from my kitchen," Caleb said. "Today, she owns half of everything that I am." Clara's eyes filled right up with tears. "I would do it all over again," she said. "Every single step, every fear, every single moment of doubt, just to wind up right here with you, even the parts that hurt, especially those parts." She took his hand. "They brought me home." Caleb pulled her in close. The sun climbed up higher in the sky, and Clara Thornton stood on that hill, looking out at the life she had built. She knew one thing with all her heart. She was not the woman who ran away anymore. She was the woman who stayed, and she would never be afraid again. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.